Well, interestingly, this is a newer kit I had Yamaha made for me, and I had the studio application in mind when I got it. And the reason I say that is because I had to make, you can see over there I have a couple of the drums that came with the kit built. So I've got a 22-inch kick, I have a 24-inch kick, I've got 10, 12, 13, 14, 16, 18-inch toms. And so with that, I pretty much can cover a lot of bases. I can go small jazzy, I can go big bottom sounding. Right now we're kind of in that big bottom-y kind of rock and roll thing. I think the last thing I worked on was more of a rock track. But oftentimes I'll switch out the toms, put a smaller tom configuration up if I'm looking for more of a tight pop thing. If I'm looking for more of a rock thing, I'll put larger toms and larger kick drums and larger snares and whatnot. You know, I mean, part of being a session guy is being able to identify sonically the characteristic of a tune that you're working on and make it happen. So, oftentimes, really the biggest thing you can get away with. Not having that many dimensions and toms and kicks, but one thing that I find is probably the most effective thing to have is have some options in the snare drum department. And I think any session drummer would probably agree with me that you probably need to have not only your basics, I call them the basic food groups, your black beauties, your chrome over brass, a good maple, 5-inch wood snare. But you can also, diversify and get some smaller dimension, smaller diameter drums. Like, for example, this is a 12-inch oak drum, and so it's for those real cracky high. That's the effect that you would get with this. More aggressive high. Or if you want to go the other way, here's like a 15-inch drum, a JR signature Yamaha. If you want to get some really low thuddy, and here's also like an 8-inch deep by 14 free floater. It's all about changing characters from song to song to give originality and a sonic signature to the track that you're working on at the moment. When I get a new kit, I get a bunch of different heads, and the first thing I do is I'll go and I'll change out all the heads. And I'll usually start with just a coated ambassador. I'm a Remo guy, so I usually go with all Remo. But like a coated ambassador, batter head on the toms. I'll play with them a little bit, see if I like them, see how the drum reacts. Every drum reacts to a different type of head, and you kind of have to find that good marriage, I found. Even if I have another maple kit, and this type of head works great on that. That's not always true for some reason. I wish it was, but then I'll go a clear head or a single ply clear, double ply clear, whatever. You find the head that works best. For me, right now in this kit, I was using a coated Emperor on the toms, and I was just comparing them actually a couple days ago, the clear Emperor to the coated, and the toms just seem to speak a little bit better with the clear Emperor on these particular drums. So that's where I'm at right now. I'm kind of a fan of the CS, the controlled sound, the dot on the bottom Remo head. It's a coated on top, got the on the underside, got that dot. It kind of helps a little bit with the overtones and gives the head a little bit more durability. It lasts a little bit longer. Headwise, PS or P3 on the kick. Again, you kind of have to go and experiment through those. How much stuffing do you put in the inside? How much do you take out? It's like just the other day I was working on a session here, and I took all the stuffing out of the kick drum and then moved the internal microphone out to give it a bit more wide open, puffy sound. Next song, I throw all the padding back in there, move the kick drum mic closer to the front beater, and now you're back to a tight, more controlled sound. So it variates, and I guess the main thing is that you have to know your drums and know what works, what head combination works. And I've been doing a thing recently where I'll find a setting or a tuning combination between the top and bottom head that I like, oh my gosh, that's just magic. In this room, that's magic, because it does change from room to room, I've noticed. One snare drum will sound amazing at this spot in the room, and you take it to another room and it sounds like crap for some reason. So what I've been doing lately is I'll go and I'll actually write down on the top head what the actual note is. I'll find the note right on the top and right with the bottom and top head combination, the way they resonate, and mark them down, and at least that's a good jumping off point for the next time you change heads, you know. I found, like on snare drums, I'm in this mode right now where I kind of like a minor third difference between the top head and the snare head. It seems to work. There's some sort of resonant thing that happens really well. And tom-wise, I try to keep them close, depending on how much, you know, I want from the tom. That's, you know, you change if you're doing a jazz thing, if you're doing a big band record. A couple months ago, I was doing a big band record, and so I would change, went to coated ambassadors, tightened all the heads up. You want to, it's a whole completely different style of tuning. So, yeah, you have to be flexible, I guess, to do that. So, I'm a huge fan of muffling. And my favorite thing is that I don't have an endorsement. I'm just saying this because I love this stuff. It's called Moon Gel, and I see a lot of guys using this. It's, I don't know, it's the best stuff. It can control ring without really destroying the tone of the drum. That's the big thing. When you're in a real close mic situation, man, it's like you're vulnerable. Your drums are out there naked, and you can hear every nuance of overtone and ring, and if you're tuning them incorrectly or not tuned well, that's another issue. I've noticed, though, that moon gels tend to really help the tuning process quite a bit. So I really enjoy those. You know, sometimes the toms, if we need a real quick decay, we'll put some tape or something on the bottom to muffle them up. But generally in the top, I'll put a couple pieces, depending on the size of the drum, again, to help out with overtones. You know, I'm a Paiste guy. I love Paiste cymbals. I have for a long, long time. So I tend to gravitate towards the Paiste line, and particularly right now I've been using the Dark Energy line. So this is 17, 18, and 19-inch Dark Energy crashes. This is just a 12-inch signature splash I have up there. And this is a 22-inch Dark Energy Mark I. Ride cymbals, I think, are the hardest thing in the world to find. And I've got probably 30 of them, and I use maybe 3 of them. They're just the hardest thing. They're so personal. Too much overtone, too much attack, not enough overtone, not enough wash. You know, it just, and it seems like every year music is changing, so you have to change your ride. But I do have a few rides. This is one particular I just love. It's dark, it's got ping, but it still has enough wash in it and a decent bell sound that I can use it in a wide variety of applications. Hat-wise, actually, I'm using, this is an old vintage pair of Zildjians from the 60s. They're 15-inch, and I've been really into larger hats. In fact, I've got these great set of Paiste 20 series that I use quite a bit. Let's see right here. Yeah, these guys are fantastic medium light hats, 16-inch hats. Now they're, you know, standard size obviously in hats are 14, so it might get a little getting used to playing a hat that size. But the thing is, I've noticed with engineers, as in the last few years, is that we're gravitating away from bright cymbals, and so I've noticed we're all kind of going to find the darkest, non-obnoxious sounding cymbals and musical cymbals that we can find. And these are incredibly musical cymbals, and they're not obnoxious, and engineers seem to really like them. In modern rock music particularly, there's a lot of compression going on in the snare drums, and which kind of sucks in like the overheads and, or you know, the crashes, and particularly the hi-hat is the big issue. And if you've ever tracked yourself or produced, you realize that that is like the bane of a rock drummer's existence, is the hat leaking into the snare drum. And that's why I think we probably have a lot of, you know, sound replacing going on now in modern rock music, is because the isolation is just so difficult when you're just thrashing away on the hi-hat. And that's basically all you hear in the snare mic. So, which is one thing, you know, we were going to talk about later, but learning how to, as a player, control the volumes is sort of like mixing yourself live, you know, learning how to turn the volume down on your hat or your overheads, but yet keep the volume going on your left hand and your kick drum, keeping it consistent. engineers will love you. And ultimately, it's good for you because it helps them be able to maintain and keep your original tracks intact later on when they go to mix the record. So, now what's interesting about splash cymbals, though, I've worked with producers in the past, and it was so taboo to have splashes on a recording session, which is funny. And I'm not going to name names, but I'd show up at a session. I remember this one time, and like they had taken down a splash cymbal before I got there. I'm like, well, what happened to my splash cymbals? You aren't playing that on my record. I love it. But so everybody has their idea of what is acceptable and not acceptable. So you kind of have to roll the punches. But there was a period of time where splashes were in modern rock. Woo, man, don't do that. But crash-wise, though, I tend to gravitate towards larger crashes, 20s, 19s. Probably the smallest I'll go now is like a 17, just because I just like the sound of it. I think they blend, they mix well. When you start getting into the 16, 15, 14 crash level, I feel like they stick out too much in the mix. They're a little too obnoxious. So I tend not to use those. I mean, I have them, but I tend not to use them. I kind of dig the wood tip sticks. Vic Firth, of course. Come on. I use the Extreme 5As. Recently, I got into these. I've been using 5As forever, and it's just like, why do I keep busting these sticks? and Joe recommended, hey, have you tried the Extreme 5A? And like, no. So I got them, and man, they're awesome. Add a little bit extra length and power, and but yeah, I always go with the wood tip because I just feel like it makes the drums and the cymbals sound more like themselves. I feel like the nylon is a little bit, it makes it sound a little synthetic sounding. Just my opinion. I know a lot of guys use them. I can see why people would want them to use because sometimes the tips get a little soft or whatnot, but when they get soft, it's time for a new pair. So, I mean, I used to play heavier drumsticks, but I have found as I've gotten older, you don't need to hit the drums harder to make them sound better. I've noticed that. It's interesting how drums, there's a cutoff point with tone on drums for some reason. It seems like you keep hitting harder and harder, and eventually you get to a point where it's like hitting a brick wall. They shut down. And so I don't want to overdo it. I want it to be comfortable, and I don't use tremendously heavy sticks. Now, I play heavy. I get a lot of volume. Some of my bandmates will attest to that, but I find that you don't necessarily have to hit really hard to get great tone out of the drums. In fact, oftentimes I think better tone comes out of a drum when you don't hit it quite as hard. So.